Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So Brie Larson's been sharing pictures of herself doing Captain Marvel things, so I thought it was time for a Captain Marvel Avengers Infinity War movie. If you didn't know, that's the movie that she's debuting in. So here we go. So everybody's looking at this and they're like, wait a minute, does this mean that they're gonna do Kelly Sue DeConnick's run for the Captain Marvel movie? So really just to explain a timeline of how Captain Marvel is going to appear in the Marvel Universe. If you guys didn't know, she's going to appear for the first time in Avengers Infinity War. My guess is that it would be Spider-Man style where she gets the intro. She may get her powers in that movie because her powers aren't like Spider-Man's powers, because in the context of power levels, she's someone on the level of Vision or Scarlet Witch, so it would require, like if they're not going to do the comic book origin of her powers, which I'll explain in a second, they're going to have to use an Infinity Gem, which would merit like a really big on-screen moment where she goes from being Carol Danvers, Air Force pilot, to Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, Wonder Woman of the Marvel Universe. And if you guys didn't know, she's effectively been used like the Wonder Woman of the Marvel Universe up until recently. Now the distinction is less clear. Like she's just like a really superpowered person in the Marvel Universe that's charged with defending the Earth. She's like the Avenger who lives in space. And really, like the reason that I think that Brie Larson is reading this comic is one, because Kelly Sue DeConnick, she's a great writer, so it's a nice run. But this is actually not the current run of Captain Marvel comics. Right now, Civil War II is going on, and the people that are writing the Captain Marvel comic are the former showrunners of Agent Carter. It's like a whole different story, but the whole idea is that during Kelly Sue DeConnick's run, at the beginning of that, Iron Man comes to Carol Danvers and says, you know what I think? We need an Avenger in space. I think that Rhodey would be awesome for the job. And she gets kind of pissed off because in the comics, she and Rhodey had a sexual history together. They've been boyfriend and girlfriend for a long time, but they kind of broken up since then. So she's kind of having this midlife crisis and isn't really sure of her place in the world where she belongs. So she's like, I just need some time to myself to think things over. So she's like, okay, I'm the best person to go into outer space. It becomes this big crossover story with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it ends with her leading S.W.O.R.D., which is kind of like the galactic version of S.H.I.E.L.D. So you've seen the Marvel movies so far. You've seen how Nick Fury, Coulson, S.H.I.E.L.D. works in the Marvel Universe. Imagine they start to learn about more galactic threats, the stuff that's going on in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Those movies have largely not been super connected to what's going on planet Earth. But imagine they start to cross over in Avengers Infinity War. So the Avengers and the people of Earth, like the governments of Earth, say, we need somebody in outer space to protect us on a full-time basis. So that whole arc, like the one that Brie Larson is reading right here, just kind of redefines Captain Marvel's role in the Marvel Universe as that person in outer space that's trying to protect the Earth from all the other intergalactic threats. So it sounds like, however, on the outset, she debuts in the Avengers movie as Carol Danvers, and then Infinity War happens, and there's all these galactic threats. Thanos versus the Avengers. The Earth realizes that they're like a small pebble in the grand scheme of things, and they're like, okay, we need some more guns in space. Captain Marvel, you're the person for the job. And then we get the Captain Marvel movie. But just to chart the timeline, if you guys didn't know the Phase 3 timeline, currently the first movie after Avengers Infinity War, where Captain Marvel's going to debut, is going to be Ant-Man and the Wasp. Then Captain Marvel is going to be like their spring 2019 movie. Then the next movie after the Captain Marvel movie is the next Avengers movie. It's going to be, like New Avengers or whatever they're going to pick for the title. But in terms of the way the characters introduced to the Avengers, think of it in a very Spider-Man Civil War type way. Like, I know a person, and they go find that person, and that person just happens to be Carol Danvers. So what a coincidence then that Kelly Sue DeConnick introduced her version of Captain Marvel in this run in a Spider-Man crossover. Peter Parker and Carol Danvers have like this one-off adventure in a Spider-Man comic book before she debuts in this Captain Marvel #1 title. So most of you, even if you don't read comics, you've probably seen her costume. You have like some vague idea about who she is, but her powers and her backstory are very complicated. Also the story of how she got the name Captain Marvel, because there have been several versions of the Captain Marvel and the Miss Marvel character. So way back in 1967, in the original Captain Marvel title, Captain Marvel Volume 1, number 18, she debuts as Carol Danvers, gets captured by the enemy of Captain Marvel, the original Kree Captain Marvel. His enemy's trying to hurt him, so he captures Carol Danvers, takes her to this device called the Cyclomagnetron, and it's like this magic device for creating weapons of mass destruction. So he uses this energy source to create this giant robot They defeat it, everything blows up, and Captain Mar-Vell escapes with Carol Danvers, but she's injured in the blast, so the energy from the device infuses her and gives her powers. She becomes Miss Marvel. So that was way back in the 1960s. She goes on to have adventures as Miss Marvel, becomes kind of like the Wonder Woman of the Marvel Universe, but then much later, that Captain Mar-Vell gets cancer, dies. She takes his name, Captain Marvel, as a way to honor him. And then as part of the transition, she gets the new version of the costume that most of you are probably familiar with, like the one that Brie Larson is wearing here. But the funny thing about that is that she's actually a colonel in the military. She's not a captain. She just uses the Captain Marvel name as a way to honor the original Captain Marvel. So you see, it's very confusing. Just expect the movies to cut through a lot of that. Like, they'll probably have some winks to her origin story from the comics. It will probably involve something from the Kree, the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Infinity Stones. So they'll just combine all that and make it really easy to follow. So for those of you asking, you don't need to go back and read all these big runs. You don't even really need to read this Kelly Sue DeConnick run that Brie Larson is reading, because it's this big crossover with the Guardians of the Galaxy story. A lot of it is the story of how Star-Lord basically ousts his father from the Galactic Empire in the comics. His father in the comics is going to be very different from his father in the movies, so already we're way off of comic book story, so don't worry about it. Just expect to see a lot of Easter eggs for her comic book origin story in the movie version of her origin story. But here's my question for you guys. Because she is so powerful in the Marvel Comics, do you think that they will use an Infinity Stone as a way to give her power in the movies? Because the Psyche Magnetron, the device that gives her powers in the comics, sounds like the energy that you would find in an Infinity Stone. Like, that's how big and powerful it is. So it seems like it would be much easier for them to just use an Infinity Stone as the MacGuffin to give her powers, in the same way that they use the Mind Gem to give Scarlet Witch and Vision their powers. So it just remains to be seen how big a part of Infinity War she is. I imagine she'll probably be featured in it at least as much as Spider-Man was featured in Civil War. So I'm expecting her to get at least 20 to 30 minutes in a 2.5-hour movie, just because there's so much stuff happening in Infinity War. But for those of you asking now, like, where is Infinity War? What stage of development is it in? They didn't really tease too much of it at Comic-Con. So there are 2 Infinity War movies. They just decided to change the title of the second movie because it's going to be so different. The people that are writing Infinity War are also writing the second movie at the same time. So they have 2 Avengers movies that they're making at the exact same time. They might even shoot those back to back. But hopefully that answers that question. They're basically finishing the scripts for the first Infinity War movie right now and the second one at the same time. So I would expect to hear more about the movie when they finish those scripts. Most of their attention for the rest of this year is going to be spent promoting Doctor Strange, then Guardians of the Galaxy, which is like the next big movie in the spring, then Spider-Man Homecoming. Once we get closer to Spider-Man coming out, that's when you'll probably see them hype the shit out of Infinity War. But let me know in the comments, when do you think we're going to see the first teaser for Infinity War? I'm guessing that it's going to be after Spider-Man Homecoming hits theaters. So in related news, giveaway time. Congratulations to this week's giveaway winner, Michael Damasi. You win a $20 Amazon gift card. Just be sure to private message me on the back end of my channel so I can get your contact details. So my next video will probably be for Suicide Squad sequels, what I think is going to be happening with those characters. But if there's any more Marvel, Infinity War, Captain Marvel videos that you guys want me to do, just let me know in the comments. While you guys wait for my next video to post, you can click here to learn how the Deadpool sequel has declared open war on all comic book sequels, especially Infinity War, and you can click here for all my Suicide Squad movie Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.